Welkom allemaal. Ik zag aan de lijst dat er een hele mix is van zowel native camp klanten als wat progress klanten. We doen het eerste deel zoals ik al heb aangegeven, in het Nederlands. Daarna schakelen we over naar het Engels en ik zal daar uiteraard ook bij bezig zijn en vragen beantwoorden als ze achteraf zijn, eventueel het Nederlands als dat een dingetje is. Vandaag gaan we hebben over dit technical camp, LoadMaster-model en sizing en security options. We hebben tegenwoordig een breed scala aan mogelijkheden die we daar kunnen invullen voor jullie. Zowel voor uiteraard de campklanten van oudsher, die het misschien wel beter kennen. Ook daar een aantal uitbreidingen, maar ook aan de kant van progressklanten die zeg maar, geïnteresseerd zijn in dit soort oplossingen al niet te integreren met wat ze al doen, of zeg maar niet op te pakken, of vanuit nieuwsgierigheid wat wij daar doen. Next slide, please. Next one, please. Ja, als je kijkt naar de one back, please. Als je kijkt naar de overname die plaatsgevonden afgelopen december van Camp door Progress, is natuurlijk een nieuwe wereld overgegaan ten aanzien van application experience. Application experience is een belangrijke poot vanuit Progress bekeken om in te vullen ten aanzien van de oplossingen die we daar bieden. Als het gaat om always on, als het gaat om beschikbaarheid, als het gaat om een goed performende applicatie. De application poot wordt daarin verstevigd. Ik heb aan het eind nog even een slide voor jullie opgenomen. We hebben een keurige, een hele leuke meeting volgende week, waarin jullie kunnen kennis maken met Progress op een andere manier, met sprekers, de mensen van Progress en de organisatie. Daar kom ik zo nog eventjes op terug. Maar die application port, dat is echt daadwerkelijk een heel belangrijk topic voor onze klanten. Het is een thema in de markt en het is zeker ook uiteindelijk een belangrijk topic om voor jullie klanten te zorgen als het gaat om een soepele werkende omgeving. Aan de kant van de security, aan de kant van performance, aan de kant van zichtbaarheid in wat er in je omgeving gebeurt. Next slide, please. Als je kijkt naar wat wij dan zeg maar, doen binnen Progress, heb ik het eventjes neergezet op een aantal herkenbare zaken. Progress is vooral gewoon groot geworden in wat we noemen de digital experience. Dat heb ik even vertaald naar wat er in het echte leven gebeurt als wij gebruik maken van bepaalde diensten. Zeg even van op de house, dingen waar we interacteren. Denk eten, denk aan vermaak, denk aan zeg maar alle zaken rond reizen bijvoorbeeld. De dingen die wij werkelijk waarmee interacteren. Als je kijkt naar de dingen die we willen veranderen, dan praat je over agile. Dat is die adaptability en continuity van waaruit we als we iets hebben draaien uiteindelijk willen transformeren naar iets anders. Of willen managen en willen zorgen dat het wat efficiënter gaat draaien. Als je kijkt naar de enablers van de experience, van die zaken, dan kijk je eigenlijk naar de dingen die waar mogelijk maken. Te zorgen dat daar uiteindelijk de dingen werken. En dat gaat over logistiek en over engineering en over bijvoorbeeld keukens en cateringstaf die uiteindelijk daar een rol speelt. Die groene bol, daarin praten we eigenlijk over application experience. Dus wat we uiteindelijk ervaren, maar wat wordt als het ware mogelijk gemaakt door een achterliggende infrastructuur. Nou, als je kijkt naar de infrastructuur, dan praat je bijvoorbeeld over analogie van een luchthaven, waarin eigenlijk al die hubs, die passagiers die in en uit komen, one more back please.
It's automatic, you know that, right?
No, sorry. Het is die luchthaven van waaruit je eigenlijk stroompassagiers en vliegtuigen die in en uit komen, de mechanismen die uiteindelijk worden gecontroleerd. Als dat niet werkt, dan zie je uiteindelijk, oké, next slide please, zie je inderdaad wat er misgaat. Dit is de rij waarin ik in stond 2 weken geleden, de infame rij op Schiphol van kilometers lang om bij de vlucht te komen. Ik heb het net gehaald, 3,5 uur in de rij staan. Als er ergens een radartje uit die application experience niet werkt, dan zie je wat daar misgaat. Nou, wat maakt nou die goede ervaring wel mogelijk? Dat heeft te maken met zichtbaarheid op het netwerk, heeft te maken met kunnen monitoren van je omgeving. Hoe soepel, hoe snel je applicatie eigenlijk loopt en dat het allemaal veilig verloopt. Next slide, please. En dat is die application experience. Als je kijkt naar waar wij vanuit Progress die invulling aan geven, is het op meerdere lagen. We gaan het vandaag hebben over vooral die application delivery. Dus Progress LoadMaster, hoe je dat gaat sizen, hoe je dat gaat vormgeven en hoe je daar zijn richting aan geeft. We hebben uiteraard, en dan gaan we volgende week, Michaela, de week erop, nog een tweede seminar organiseren van waar de kant van monitoring en analyse gaan bekijken. Next slide, please. Ik gaf het een beetje aan, we hebben volgende week een super gave event in Breda, schrijf je in. Het is een ideale mogelijkheid om eigenlijk gewoon te kunnen interacteren met onze mensen, met progress, kennis te maken met wat we doen. We hebben een aantal super interessante sprekers die daar zeg maar, verhaal zullen houden vanuit de ervaring die ze hebben met progress, met de oplossingen die we leveren en ook de kennis die wij zeg maar, met ze delen in de markt en samen die markt bouwen. Schrijf je in. Het is superleuk. Je kunt een rondpostje winnen op het moment dat je daar bent, dat je hebt ingeschreven en daarvoor wordt ingelood of uitgelood, moet ik het zeggen. Dinsdag in Breda, de 21ste, de langste dag van dit jaar, om 2 uur. Ik zal zorgen dat jullie een link krijgen, dat je dat ook online kunt inschrijven. Oké, dank u wel. Dit was mijn superkorte intro. Ik ga nu echt voor de meat of the bone ga ik jullie introduceren bij Renard Schoepvol, mijn collega sales engineer vanuit Kempen, oorspronkelijk onderdeel van Progress, ook samen met mij, om jullie verder mee te nemen in de LoadMaster sizing kant van de wereld. Dus veel plezier en succes. Als er vragen zijn, stel ze in het Nederlands, stel ze in het Engels. We zullen daar een rol spelen. Thank you, Renard. Your turn.
Great, thank you. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for the nice introduction, Martin. A few words to me for you guys that might not know me yet. I'm the pre-sales consultant for DACH and Benelux. So if you have any technical LoadMaster questions, feel free to contact me by email, Teams, or phone, no matter. I'm happy to answer your questions and assist you with your projects. So that's why I put the slide back in, just for you to get the contact details from me. Right. Now, our first webinar, we choose some topics we thought you might be interested in. So the first one is LoadMaster models and sizing, and the second is an introduction in some of the security features that the LoadMaster provides. Normally, what I do in those webinars is I will have some theory slides and then I have a practical session. Now, we filled this one pretty much with loads of information, so I'm not too sure how much practical I can add into the hour, but we will see. I can run this a talk afterwards, it's no problem. So, LoadMaster sizing and modeling. First of all, what options do we have? I'm quite sure you know what a LoadMaster is. So LoadMaster is a product to balance your application request traffic to your application servers, right? So whatever application it is, web-based, SMTP, or anything TCP can be balanced, right? All client requests get balanced to the backend servers. Why would I balance that? You can put one server into maintenance and no client in the front will notice, because the load balancer will just send the request to the remaining ones. So just to pick you up from what a load balancer is. Now, some of you might know load balancer under a different term. It's also called ADC, Application Delivery Controller, simply meaning on top of the normal balancing features, which Kemp is well known for, there are extra features like authentication, for example, or web application firewall, right? Or intrusion prevention systems, or content delivery features, and so on and so on and so on. So every vendor has extra features on top of the normal balancing options, and that's what ADC is standing for. Now, products from us can be virtual, running on any kind of hypervisor or cloud. So it's running in Orange Cloud, in Telecom Cloud, in one-on-one Cloud, in AWS, in Azure, for example, but also on your local hypervisors, VMware, KVM, Hyper-V. I even have it running on Proxmox, right? The free one. So you can run the load balancer nearly on anything. Then, as I said, cloud. So we are in the cloud, and we also have hardware units. So you can buy hardware to put in your own shelf, and then you have it all in a dedicated hardware as well. So very flexible in options how you bring a load balancer into your environment. Now, to pick you up, I think this is a nice compressed slide. We do have different models, okay? So let's start with virtual ones. As you can see, I've used some different colors here. So let's start with perpetual. Perpetual means you buy a license, which you'll have forever. It will never die. It will always run. Okay, and it's combined with a subscription of support and additional features. So, but the main unit will run forever. It's an unlimited license. We have 3 sizes of that. It's a medium, small VLM 500, medium VLM 3000, and large VLM Max, which has no limits from our end. Whatever you put in resources in, it can handle, or it will grow with your dedicated resources. And there's also a VLM Geo, which can only do geo balancing. It's a specific feature, but to be honest, I don't know. The Americans love it very much. I'm not that much of a fan because it's nothing else than a VLM 500 with Enterprise Plus subscription, but it can do less, but it's more expensive. So on the end of the day, I'd rather sell a VLM 500. There's more value for your money, but fair enough. Look, if you want to buy a Geo, I'm happy to sell a Geo, but anyway. So those 3 sizes. Now we also have a leasing option. Leasing is a bit different. You might know that from a car. You lease for a certain time, and if you do not, if you don't buy it afterwards, you have to return the car, right? So it's similar here. You buy for a certain time, and if that time ends, the load balancer will shut down. If you have not extended the lease, it will shut down and it's dead, gone. That's it. For a 3-year period, as you can see the list prices here, it's cheaper to go with a leasing option, right? It's always Enterprise Plus. So for 3-year window, it's cheaper than going that path up here. But if you look for 5 or 6 years, it will turn. The perpetual will become much cheaper than the lease. And also for service providers, there is an option called Service Provider License Agreement, short SPLA. For those, we do offer 2 even smaller versions, right? So sometimes a service provider has a customer that, let's talk about Exchange, has 50 mailboxes or something like that. You don't need a big VLM 500 for that. You can do with a smaller one. But this is monthly cost. But in the end of the day, you have a smaller load balancer possible. But that's only for service providers. Okay. How do you distinguish from the name what this load balancer is capable of? VLM 500, as the name said, it can have 500 megabits per second throughput in and out, and up to 500 SSL TPS. So these are most of the time the limiting pieces. That's why I added it into this slide. VLM 3000 has 3 gigabit of throughput and 4,000 up to 4,000 SSL TPS. You need a little bit more resources than the VLM 500 for that. And the VLM Max has no limitations from our end. Whatever you add in on resources, you get out. So that's you can scale up with that one pretty much. Okay. Then looking into the hardware units, I know that there seems to be some chats. Martin, will you take those chats that we can answer them afterwards? So I don't need to look at it right now.
Absolutely, yes.
Cool, thank you. So hardware units, we have also 2 small ones for beginning, let's say it that way. LMX1, very small, 1 gigabit throughput, 1 K SSL TPS, only 4 interfaces, so it's really a small unit, right? And it has not enough RAM to do specific features like web application firewall. That's why the enterprise level is not enabled, because the resources are just not enough on that machine. LMX3, a little bit bigger, a bit over 3 gigabit throughput, 1.7 K SSL TPS. You see the RAM is double. You also have double the amount of LAN ports. Here you can of course use all the features, Enterprise Plus level to work. And then X15, this is where business starts. You see the jump in the price. So here is business starting. You have over 15 gigabit throughput, 12,000 SSL TPS, 32 gig RAM, so that's massive. You have 20 network interfaces, 16 copper and 4 fiber. You have a RAID hard drive system, so even if a hard drive dies, you are still running. It also has a redundant power supply, so it has 2 power cords. If one power supply dies, the unit is still running. So as I said, this is where business starts. And then of course it's scaling up, X25, X40, as you can see. two copper only 12 fiber ports, and then throughput of 25 gigabit and 40 gigabit. So as you can see, this is scaling up a lot. X40 is also available in an M version, which has 4 times the amount of RAM, allows you way more throughput. And then we have, since last year, very recent, 3 new boxes called XHC, and they are coming with 25 gigabit, 40 gigabit, and 100 gigabit. So the difference here is, of course, the throughput, but the main point is that you have extra fiber ports. So instead of the 12 10 gigabit ports of the X40, you have only 8 of them, but you have 4 faster ones, 25 gig, or with the X40, 40 gig, and with a 100G, even 100 gig fiber ports. So that's the main difference on those. Right. As you don't deploy hardware in a hypervisor, there's only the perpetual option available. So you buy the hardware, which will run forever, and you combine it with the support subscription. Now, I mentioned a lot about support. So how about we go to the next slide if it wants? Here we go. What is the support subscription model? So mainly with standard support, you get all basic features, so every basic things. So the load balancing, of course, all the methods in there, content switching, all of that is already included. Monday to Friday support, right? Normal open office hours. You get software updates, security patches, and of course you can use Kemp products like Kemp 360 Vision also with that unit. So all the normal baseline things. Enterprise support, 1 level higher, will include everything I just mentioned. And now you get the Edge security pack, which means you have the authentication pack to do pre-authentication on the load balancer. You get intrusion prevention, so that's based on Snort rules. You get the engine and you can upload your own rules and use a pre-made rule set from snort.org. You also get 24/7 support, and yeah, you can also use Kemp 360 Vision and Sentry for free. And then Enterprise Plus, the highest level of support that we offer, involves all the standard and enterprise features. And now you add the web application firewall, the geo server load balancing. So that's if you want to balance between multiple sites. Okay. Of course, daily rule updates and bad IP list updates for the web application firewall, daily IP reputation updates for the geo balancing, and for virtual units, floating license. That means you start, for example, on site, but in half a year time, your customer decides, I now need to go to the cloud. Then they can, with a floating license, they can take their load balancer from on-premise, from a hypervisor they have, and we can migrate it into the cloud. We can bring the license over and they don't need to buy it again. So that's what floating license is about. The same way as well back, right? So from cloud to on-prem is also possible. I've seen these things. People went to the cloud and realized, yeah, cloud is sometimes not as good as they promote it to be. And they went then into a hybrid combination between cloud and on-site, and they needed the load balancer on-site again. So we can make that happen, no problem. Now, that was to the generally information. Now, moving up, we also have metered options. So this is more, I would say, modern multi-tenancy, okay? Say it that way. So metered licensing, it is if you need a pretty large amount of load balancers. So with X, let's take the medium-sized load balancer. For this to get break-even, you need about 12 to 15 load balancers, and then you get into this range more or less. So what this means is you can have an unlimited amount of load balancers deployed in your environment, but as long as you only have a throughput between 0 and 10 gigabit peak, then you are within your monthly subscription of 3.5K. I can say we have, for example, a big customer in Switzerland. They have 180 load balancers used. They have a pair for each customer they serve, and they are around between 3 and 5 gigabit per month peak throughput. So from that perspective, yeah, there in that subscription, it's the cheapest option possible for them. They're pretty happy. So yeah, this is what Meter is about. It's all VLAN Max instances, so the load balancers itself are not limited, and you can have as much as you want. You have WAF included, 24/7 support, all features, and as I said, you don't have for each load balancer their own license. It will all be licensed through one licensing server called Chem360 Central, and that will maintain all of your licenses for you. So very, very simple and easy, and takes loads of pressure off you. How does it work? As I said, you have the Chem360 Central in the environment. It will collect reports, usage data, and so on, takes samples every couple of minutes. It also provides a load balancer with a license. You get a monthly report, which will be built through Kemp and the partners. And you or the customer, you can even allow the customer to get access to Central, but only see their own load balancer and the details for that. So you can have it all visible and be possible to follow through for your end customers also. Similar approach is called pooled licensing. So that's really the modern MT approach, I guess. So here you buy a pool, for example, 50 gigabit. And now you can deploy virtual load balancers in different sizes that you can choose from until your pool is used up. So imagine this like to be a big cake, okay? So you can have, for example, VLAN 500 or VLAN 1000 or 2000, or this is even a 100. So 50, 100, 1000, 2000, 3000, 5000, 10,000. So there are different licenses possible. And you can now pick and choose. For example, you could have a pair of 10G, that means 20 gigabit already gone, so still 30 gigabit left. I can now have 10 3000, for example, and now I have my 50 completely used up. Or I had a customer request the other day, they wanted 95 VLAN 500s. Okay, yeah, VLAN 500 is 50 gigabit subscription. That gives you 100 VLAN 500s if you want to. So as I said, pooled is quite nice. You don't have any overage, so you can't go over your pool. You can't extend that. In the metered one, it's different. If you go beyond your usage, you might need to pay overage. Here, it can never be in any overage. Very interesting licensing models, but as I said, you need a certain amount of load balancers to make them usable. So yeah, that's I have already mentioned all of that to complete my speech. Now, this was the overview on what licenses are actually there, what models are there, what licenses are there. Now, let's talk a little bit about the process. So I know that Martin, we only have partners here in the room right now, or do we have end customers as well?
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them, okay.
Mixed, yeah.
Fair enough, that's cool. Now, still interesting for everyone. So how should the process actually be, or how can the process be, or should it be? So the first step for partners is they should find out what the project of the customer is, right? So they need to get loads of information. What is it the customer wants to do? Why do they want to do it? And get loads of information so we can assist with sizing. Then they should register a project. At least in DACH, it's definitely like that, because registering a project means extra discounts. So registering a project also means that the offer we make is limited to that partner, right? So they have the first peek on it, and no one else can take that offer away. Step 2. If a partner is not confident enough and be able to run the whole thing on their own, they can engage with us, sales engineers, which would be for your region me. So just let me know if I can help you, if we should organize a demonstration, or if we should do a proof of concept with the customer, or maybe you need extra documentation, how a certain feature is established, how it is set up. I'm happy to provide all of that. Okay, so to really make sure we can pick up our customers properly. And once that's done, I also have some sizing guides. I'm not sure if I have the slides in here. We will see in a minute. If not, I show it afterwards. There we have a sizing guide where you can also get some information and some, or just a peek in what direction your discussion goes. Okay, and then we create the quote, and of course we follow up, because after a quote there might be still some other jobs to be done. So that's the discovery that Kemp, before we got progress, so that's what Kemp wanted it to be. And I'm happy to fulfill. If there's anything I can help you with, let me know, or Martin, and he will come back to me anyway. Cool. Now, we do have a nice page on our website called Config Tool. I like it pretty much because it gives you straight away the list price information. Of course, Progress is selling through distribution and to partners, okay? And there's percentages and so on involved. But this gives you a nice direction where the journey goes, okay? So you can say, okay, I want hardware load balancer or virtual or cloud. You can choose what model, you can choose if it's single unit or pair, and the amounts you need, and it will directly tell you how many units, which SKU for ordering, what's the list price for that, and it will give you a running total, which is pretty nice. So it goes for leasing, same for perpetual and support. You can choose the different support levels and the years, and you can get a very nice idea where the direction goes. So you don't need to get a quote for something you wouldn't order in the first place. You get the information straight away. How much will it be? And then you have something to give back to your customers, or even your customers. They can, of course, look and get an overview where the journey goes. Okay, so that's one part of the web page. I pretty much like it. I use it every week, honestly. Quite nice. We also have sizing guides. So I put the link here. I'm pretty sure, Martin, when we follow up, we will provide the slides to everyone, right? So as far in Germany, we do that. So
yeah,
I hope,
sure.
yeah, so that way you get access to those links. We do have sizing guides, for example, for web applications or Nginx or Exchange, SharePoint, right? Stuff like that. So you can put bars. How many requests does the customer expect, or how many mailboxes are involved? What's the size of the mails being sent, and all of that stuff, right? And it will tell you how much those different LoadMaster types are used up with that workload you put in, which is a pretty nice direction where to go. So let me show you a sample. This is, for example, an Exchange sizing guide. Okay, so edge security, meaning load balancers opening the web SSL code and encrypting it again. Security we re-encrypt as well. So for example, 2,000 users, 50% of them simultaneously. It's a pity that the HTTPS is not 100% because that's what it normally is. But you can see those different models right now and how they're used up with SSL TPS throughput, SSL throughput, and SSL concurrency. And you see the VLAN 500 with 2,000 users is already at 3/4 usage. So up to 2,000 user, VLAN 500 is okay for Exchange for this. If you go beyond the 2,000 users, you should rather look into the VLAN 3000. Okay, VLAN 3000 can handle, just out of experience, up to 12,000 mailboxes is what the VLAN 3000, for example, can handle, and then it will look similar to this. So just to give you a direction. So this helps you a little bit to simply see, okay, what would be the right license or the right unit for me? Where are limits, right? It's a nice indication. Now, on top of that, there's always a few things to remember. SSL TPS is meaning the handshake, okay? So if I'm offloading on the load balancer, you only have client to load balancer. So that's one SSL TPS, one handshake. But if you re-encrypt, you also have a second one, load balancer to server. Okay, that means for each connection coming in, it's not one handshake, it's two. So that's something to be aware of, right? So VLAN 500 only has 500 handshakes, 500 SSL TPS per second. So if you go beyond that, you run into a limit. So that's just something to be aware of. So sometimes customers know exactly how many SSL TPS are needed, and that gives you a good indication what license it should be. Then there's also bandwidth requirements, right? So as I said before, our units are limited on the bandwidth that they can handle in and out. So sometimes network speeds are important. So if customer tells me, yep, I want hardware and I need fiber ports, I know exactly, okay, X1 and X3 out of the game because fiber ports on hardware start with X15. So this is simply to help you as well getting the sizing right. Sometimes you need bonding. So that's also interesting to know how much bonding do you want and so on. So if the customer says, yeah, I want a small load balancer, but I need a bond of 6 Ethernet ports. Okay, X1 is out because it only has 4 Ethernet ports, right? So X3 would be the one that has 8 ports, so we can create a bond of 6. So this is something to look out for. Then, yeah, ask yourself questions. Do we need to enabling the SSL TPS? Do we need to re-encrypt? Do we need WAF? If we need WAF specifically for virtual deployments, we need to make sure we add extra resources. Each WAF instance will eat up 500 Mbit of RAM minimum, and a little bit of more CPU. So you cannot say, okay, I have a VLAN 500 with the minimum requirements, 2 gig RAM, 2 CPUs, and now I enable 8 instances of WAF on there. It will die. So from that said, you need to make sure to add, specifically for virtual ones, add more resources if you enable WAF. Cool. On top of that, questions that are always interesting. Does the customer need site balancing as well? So there might be one site in Nijmegen, right? And there might be a second site in Venlo. And they want all the traffic going to Nijmegen, but if Nijmegen dies, it should all be reverted to Venlo automatically. So that's a perfect example for site balancing to get a disaster recovery site, okay? Alternatively, some customer might say, okay, I have 2 data centers, Nijmegen and Venlo, and I want them to be equally used. Yeah, that's perfect example for geo-balancing, and Progress can help you with that, balancing the request to those 2 sites. So that's geo-balancing, but that means you need Enterprise Plus subscription because that feature is available on Enterprise Plus. High availability, so do you want a pair, one active, one passive, right? That's a pair. Or do you actually want a cluster, for example? That's a different thing. It's for SSL TPS increase. You can cluster multiple units together. But I would discuss that in detail with you if you have a case for that, because I think geo-balancing might be a better option than clustering, but we get into that detail later. What service agreements? So does the customer need 24/7 support? If so, Enterprise is the minimum support subscription. Or maybe with hardware, they want next business day replacement if hardware breaks. Then it's also Enterprise level subscription. So these are things to help you pointing out in what direction the journey goes. Sometimes it's also good to find out where does the journey go in 3 or 5 years. What are the plans? Maybe a bigger unit right now in the long term is a better option because then those extra projects in 3 or 5 years can be utilized as well, better than buying something small now and need to replace the whole thing afterwards. So always a good question. And then it's also good to find out, does the customer want CapEx, like I buy for 5 years, right? Or do they want OpEx? I want a monthly bill. So always interesting to find out, maybe there's one of the metered or pooled or SPLA options being possible for that customer. And then of course, what other, I should have said Progress portfolio. So what other products might interest the customer? So there might be monitoring, there might be central with management, there might be WhatsApp Gold interest for insights of your networks, and the customer might even have some development things, and there might be some other products like Sitefinity or OpenEdge being interesting for them. So look over the rim of the teacup. There might be other products in our portfolio that also can be utilized for that project. Okay, so that was the first topic, and we are still very good in time. I hope I didn't overload you guys. Now let's look into the second one. Let's go a bit deeper into security features. For everyone who has not been in my talk in Brussels at the cybersecurity, similar slides about the security features. Let's look into them. So I already mentioned intrusion prevention. So as I said, it's an intrusion prevention engine from snort.org, which is available from enterprise subscription onwards. Of course, it's not a firewall in per se. It's simply the engine allows you to check all the requests against those rules from snort.org. We do have a starter rule set included. Of course, you can write your own and upload them. You can log on and register to snort.org. And when you register, there is not the community, there's the registered rule set, which is way more extensive. And you can upload that as well if you want. The thing is, it's a global setting. You can globally set how paranoid those rules should be checked at. So should it only log? Should it only look for serious rules that get triggered? Should it look for all rules that are triggered? Stuff like that. You cannot do it per service. It's a global setting, unfortunately. But you can enable or disable per service, and you can then, of course, block and say, should it reject or should it drop the connection? So it's it's a nice base solution for rules to check your traffic. Now, we also have the big brother, I always say, from intrusion prevention. So that's the web application firewall. So we have now, we renewed it last year. So now it's not in cooperation with TrustWave anymore. You might have read that TrustWave and the OWASP are not working together anymore. So we went away from the TrustWave rules for application-specific attacks to an open core rule set, so that you can also fish away zero-day attacks, and you're very, very, very much able to fine-tune the WAF in a way that no one else has it. So you don't get something off the shelf that hackers know how to bypass. You get something unique, which is pretty great. So it is to help you prevent OWASP top 10 attacks, of course. It's also helping you to fine-tune for your own level. So you have different paranoia levels. You can write extensions, new rules, and also a rule to say, yes, you get triggered for everyone that attacks, but I want 1 or 2 clients being excluded from that rule and stuff like that. So exclusions you can write. You can monitor who is attacking in real time in the log. You get, of course, updates of bad IPs and bad actors daily. And yeah, makes it a very nice, easy to work with system in that case. Now, why would we go away from the legacy version? As I said, it was not working with core rules. It didn't got automatic core rules. It had instead app-specific updates, and that was it. And it didn't allow you to granular log, to have anomaly scoring, tuning, different paranoias, and filtering options. So as you can see, the new enhanced WAF is way superior to the old version we discontinued last year. Now, a web application firewall still needs your perimeter firewall in front, okay? So it's not replacing that. Web application, as it says in the word, is for web traffic. So your normal perimeter firewall will block everything that's not related to your network, layer 4, layer 3, layer 7. but it will not inspect your HTTP, HTTPS request and look if there's anything fishy or bad in there. That's what the WAF is doing. So it's an extension of your firewall. It will help prevent attacks coming in that your firewall did not look at or cannot look at because it does not open the SSL traffic, and then helping the server to be clean or to stay clean, right? We also offer outbound inspection. So we can, of course, also realize quickly if a server in your environment is already bad or is already infected, and we can filter that out as well. Gives you reports where you can see this. So pretty nice to get an overall view on your health status. On top of that, we also have packet routing filter option. So you can, on a global level, create block lists or allow lists, who's allowed to connect to the load balancer on all services and who is not allowed in the first place. This is also possible for each virtual service you create on the load balancer, individual. So you could say, okay, this client is allowed to go to service A, but not to service B. So those things can, of course, be done as well. And then we have content switching options on the load balancer. So just to give you some examples, what that means, when we look into the web traffic, we can, for example, look at different headers, like the source IP header. And we could say, I only allow certain devices or certain ranges. So here in this case, as you can see, there's a must fall. I would, in this rule, I would block everyone coming from 10.0.0.0/24. I would block the whole network, as an example. Now, looking into headers, there's of course something else possible. User agent header. So this is something like your browser, where you come from, or if it's a mobile device, for example. So here I would block Firefox. So the browser Firefox is not allowed to go to my application. Of course, you can use that not only for blocking, you can use it also to guide traffic. So you might have one server being able to handle browser requests, and you have one server specialized for mobile applications. So you can use this to filter out everything that is Android and iOS and let it run the other way to that specific server that is tuned for mobile applications instead. So that way you would optimize your application experience and you would optimize your traffic flow. So that's nice examples where content switching can be utilized. Also, a cookie is nothing else than a header. So of course we can look for cookies. And you might remember the Exchange Hafnium attack. These were the two bad cookies, and you could simply block them. Boom, security done. So this is something you can, of course, do also. So as you can see, content switching is pretty, now I was too fast, pretty useful to get you security up. This is just, I would say, the top of the iceberg, right? I'm just scratching the top of the ice. There's way more possible with content switching, but I'm quite sure you can choose that later on in our questionnaire. There are more topics available, and I'm happy to talk just about that topic in a deeper level. And last but not least, wow, Martin, I'm way too quick. I'm so sorry. Last but not least, the Edge Security Pack, short ESP. So this allows you a pre-authentication on the load balancer. Means the client connects to the service you have hosted, and now there's a pre-requirement. They need to authenticate. And without being confirmed, authenticated, the connection to the backend server won't be established in the first place. So how does it work? Where's the mouse? Here's the mouse. So the client comes in, hits the service where we have this enabled. Let's take form-based as an example because it's nice and understandable for everyone. The load balancer will now present a form saying you need to give me username and password in the easiest way. It might also be 3 fields or 4 fields: username, password, token. Okay, so we can do MFA. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to get a sample, an easy example here. So username and password. Now the load balancer will collect username and password, send this to an authentication provider. We stay simple in the sample. Let's say it's LDAP. LDAP now needs to validate, yes, username and password are correct. There might also be a group involved, that we only allow certain group members access, or members out of a certain group access, that way around. So it will also verify, is that user part of the group? Now let's say all of these things are correct. User is part of the group, password and user matches together. Then the load balancer gets the go ahead back, so everything is fine. Now the connection to the user gets a cookie, authentication cookie for single sign-on. And now the connection to the server is established. And if needed, we can pass on user credentials to the server as well. Let's take a nice example here on Exchange. You go in with OA. We can fill out the form-based form on Exchange as well, so the user does not get a second login prompt from the server. And now you're connected. Once they log off, the load balancer will realize that the log off happened, will delete the cookie, and if the customer comes in again, or the client comes in again, say it that way, they have to authenticate again, right? Very, very nice option. As you see here, external authentication providers, we do have LDAP or LDAP-S. You can even use a global catalog if you need to. We can use SAML. Radius. Radius can also be combined with LDAP. You can use your ADFS. You can use RSA token. You can even combine that with LDAP if you want. And on the later firmware versions, depending on what version you're running, you can use OIDC as well, connecting to Azure and getting the authentication there. So that's also possible. As I said, 2 factors possible, either with LDAP Radius in combination or with Radius alone. Radius alone is one of those things where Radius is deciding, do I want the second factor or not? So username password goes there. Radius decides, is that okay for me, or do I want a challenge afterwards? And then you get a new prompt up where you need to put in your token, and then you can authenticate. So 2-factor is definitely possible. And of course, the intrusion detection system is combined with their ESP engine. So those belong together. Cool. Wow, that's great. We are at the end, so much faster than expected. So give me a few seconds. I'm thinking.
I got a question, Renaar. I kind of already answered about VLAN 200s and VLAN 2000s working in a HA cluster, and when and how to migrate. I already answered that it's always possible to kind of upgrade at any time. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit about the process of upgrading from, for example, 2000 or 3000. Technically, how that process works.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, reasons to kind of migrate from the one to the other.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So if you okay, over the years, so let's say it that way. When I started with Kemp 2016, we also had different load balancer virtual licenses than now. So there was a 100 and a 1000. There was a 200 and a 2000 in the years. So of course, we look at the market, what is bought, what is not bought, and sometimes units are discontinued, right? Let me show that. I think it's better to give you an example on this. Here we go. Kemp EOL. It's might be a good start to look at that. So here we go. You should see my screen, right? Okay. So as you can see, the VLAN 200 was discontinued in February 2020, meaning you can still extend the support up to February 2025. Then we will not support your unit anymore. So as you can see here, VLAN 1000 is similar. It was discontinued in April 2014. So up to 2019, the support could be extended, and then we would not extend it anymore. Here and there are are deals where you can just say, okay, I'm buying the bigger one, and I will now turn my existing unit into the unit bigger. So that's very simple. It's just a license upgrade. So all our virtual units, no matter what size, 500, 3000 max, it's all the same software. It's the same thing. So only the license that is applied in there is the limiting feature or the limiting factor. So you can turn a VLAN 200 into a VLAN 500 or 3000 or VLAN max. So that's no problem. You can get an upgrade from us, and we would simply make a license change. The new license will be available for your serial number of your device, and you just have to call home with the licensing process, download the new license, and the load balancer will reboot once to enable all new features and to extend limits and so on. And you turn your VLAN 200 or 2000 into VLAN 3000, for example, just as an option. This is not only working upwards, it's also working downwards. So if you have now a VLAN 2000, but you realize you don't need that much, you can downgrade it to a VLAN 500 as well. So that's no problem, up and down. It's simply a license update and a reboot, and that's it. I hope that answers the question so far.
I think it does, or otherwise, please say so. Are there any other questions? Alles coming in. Let me see. No, it's clear. It's clear. The question is answered. So
yeah,
if there
cool,
are any other questions, please ask. We will be happy to take any questions offline also. We will share this presentation, share the information, and share the recording. So we will be happy to kind of do any answering after the fact. So please feel free to do so.
Cool. Okay, great. Now we are pretty much more or less on time. There's 6 minutes left. So what I would do is, as you get a questionnaire afterwards, I think we should end the webinar here. The questionnaire will pop up for you. So please fill out those questions. I'm very, very much interested on your choice of topics for the next webinar to come. As this is more or less interactive, we do answer questions, and we want to know what topics you are interested in. Yes, we have pre-selected some that you can choose from, but every time we will put new topics in there, and there's also an option for you to say that you have a different topic you want to see. Let us know, and this webinar will be interactive around you and your wishes. So let us know what you're interested in, and we will make it happen. So it was a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, let me know if there's anything I should do better in the next time. So normally my topics are, as I said before, technical, and I will make a demonstration. Today, those two topics were pretty much more theory based, but all the other topics now coming up are more techy. So there will be a presentation and demo as well. So yeah, let me know how it goes, and if there's anything I can adapt to. Except the language. I don't speak Dutch, I'm afraid, sorry. But anything else, I'm happy to do. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Hope to see you soon again with the next webinar, and keep me posted. Get in touch with me if there's anything I can help you with.
Dank je, Renard. En dank je uiteraard alle gasten die aanwezig waren. Vergeet niet in te schrijven voor ons mooie event volgende week in Breda. En hoop u daar te zien, kunnen we verder praten. Dankjewel. Een hele fijne dag.